Hello and welcome to this lecture for Module 3, in which we're going to talk about some of the important aspects of a content strategy. You may have heard some of the concepts before, but this is what I consider the most important part of developing a content strategy plan. First of all, you need to understand the difference between PR and content marketing. But most importantly, you need to have goals, to have specific objectives, and you need to know your audience really well. So this is an extension of what's on chapter 7 of your book. And I just picked the most important parts of the chapter and decided to just elaborate on some of the concepts. Okay, so with this in mind, we'll take a look first at the difference between marketing and PR. And this is kind of tricky because I think most of the time they work together. Specifically now in companies, actually when I was a brand manager for Colgate and Gillette, I worked in the marketing department, but we were accountable for working with the PR agency. Now, at the time, there was no social media because that was back in 1994. So things were what we call now traditional, but still we were responsible for both PR and marketing. And most of the time, they work together. So when we talk about PR and marketing, there's a difference in the audience, in the purpose of each one, and the types of tactics that you use. When we think about PR, it's more about focusing on brand and reputation management. It's more about how you can influence, how you can engage, and how you can build a relationship with the stakeholders that you identify across the different platforms. It could be social media platforms, it could be email marketing, even a website, with the intent of shaping or changing or framing the public perception of an organization, of a brand. So quite frequently this happens when you create and distribute newsworthy content. You can do so these days by the traditional methods of sending the electronic press release, but it could be distributed and published in the digital marketing platforms too. And when we talk about content marketing as it's defined by the Content Marketing Institute, the idea is how that content marketing focuses on creating and distributing the content that is relevant, that is consistent enough to attract and retain a particular defined audience. Remember, public relations, the audience is more the general public, but with social media, you can work with, and digital marketing, you can work with more specific audiences. So what you want to do is promote your content to increase the reach, and you can leverage on PR tactics such as email outreach to the media. But so you can see they both work together. The content is designed in a way that to promote interest in a company's specialty or services, or you may want to promote digitally a piece of content to promote and share in content marketing. But if you ask me, these days, because with the advent of the web and social media, and now all the tools that we have to promote our company, they work better together. So this is like a portion of what's on your on chapter 7 of your textbook. You're gonna see also that there's a very interesting example to understand how these two work together with the British Airways example and how they wanted to attend a specific public that was not using their service, and that was the Silicon Valley executives. And so they used a marketing campaign to shape their the reputation that they had with a particular target audience. In this case, Silicon Valley executives, which they basically reunited in one flight from San Francisco to London to find out, talk to them and find out, what was keeping them from flying with them. And so they came up with different types of marketing solutions, including an event with influencers, including a Google Hangouts, including some type of content, and together with the traditional efforts, PR efforts of reaching out to journalists, they were able to obtain some earned media. And as a result, they did increase the sales with that segment. So it's very important that you know your audience and you talk to your audience and find out, where are the opportunities, what is possibly going wrong. And then we're gonna talk about now what's one of my favorite topics in when we talk about social media, digital marketing, and it's the campaign goals and SMART objectives. And this is my favorite topic because, in my opinion, if you fail to establish what your goals are for a social media or any campaign, and how you're going to measure success, whether you achieve those SMART objectives and goals, there's no point actually in just posting for the sake of it. You need to have a reason why, because you need to tell your client if your hard work is paying off. And the only way of doing that is if you establish your own SMART objectives. And we're gonna go through that. But first, just thinking about the overall goals, there are some more, but I personally like to talk about 3 main social media goals. And then for each of the social media goals, there are particular different KPIs which you can use when you are ready to develop your SMART objectives. So this infographic, if you want it, I can share it with you, gives you a good idea of what I consider are the 3 main goals. And the first one is awareness. And I think it's a common one, right? And with your client, whether it's a nonprofit or any organization, you want to create awareness about your brand, about your product, about a product launch, about maybe a particular event. You want to let people know something particular is going on. So you want to create that awareness, which is the overall more goal in general terms. And you need to see what you want to achieve when creating that awareness. So you're in a better position to put this into perspective, sit down with your client and say, okay, we want to increase or we want to have better awareness. Well, that's a good start. Then you think about how you're going to measure that awareness depending on the content that you are going to create. So there are some KPIs or main KPIs for awareness, which are reach, impressions, clicks, and followers. I'm sure you've heard about reach, which is in social media is how many times you see a post or a post is shown to you on your newsfeed. If it shows more than once, then we're talking about impressions. So you could say, oh, today I saw this post, that's reach 4 times. So that post had 4 impressions in your feed. And so it depends on what you want to measure, whether you want to measure reach or impressions. Maybe impressions is more common. And then, you say, we're going to see some examples of the SMART objectives soon. The clicks are when you share something on social media and you provide a link to either your website or any other point of content. You can measure how many clicks the post had. depends whether you choose you want to measure clicks, and that depends if you say no, I want to create awareness because I want to bring more traffic to my website. So in that case, if that's your idea, then you need to be looking at clicks. And followers is the last KPI for awareness, and it's how many followers or how many new followers can you bring to your established social media channel as a result of your social media effort. So those are the main KPIs when it comes to awareness. Then there is a different goal about a different type of campaign, which is called engagement. I'm sure you've heard about it. And it's when people take some type of action to engage with your social media post. So that includes the post likes, either if they share it, if they make any comment, or if they mention your brand, or even if you when they upload user generated content. And that is when you, or when people just voluntarily upload a image or a video, and they to talk about your brand, or to talk about your product, or to talk about your organization. So keeping in mind the same example that I used during that last week's video. So if we say I went to that sushi restaurant and I uploaded an image of my plate or what I ordered, and I tagged the restaurant, then that's user generated content. And so companies can use that content as content curation, to go back at last week's topic, and use that as part of their content strategy. So when we're talking about engagement, you want to see first you identify the platform, and then establish what you want to achieve as a result of an engagement campaign on social media. So if you are wanting to ask people to upload content using a hashtag, then that falls in user generated content. And so your SMART objective would be about obtaining a particular amount of content with a particular hashtag. If you want to increase the amount of people liking your posts, then that is a different KPI. And so it's important to only use one KPI per objective. Why? Because if you say, I want to increase likes and comments on X platform during one particular period, at the end of the period, what happens if you achieve one and not the other? So you need to separate the KPIs depending on the different campaigns. And the third and last main goal, social media goal, is conversions. And this is where people take actions more into the last couple of steps of the content marketing funnel. And it's when they fill out a form, when they register their email address to receive your newsletter, where they make a purchase, and they purchase a particular product from social media post link, and they complete that action. And then also, this one is more common when they decide to download a piece of content. So you see the difference is they take a particular action that drives them closer to you and to your brand. And here are some particular examples of when we talk about SMART objectives. So you can see the first one is related to awareness. So we just mentioned that one of the KPIs for awareness is page followers. So an example of a SMART objective would be to increase page followers on Instagram by 10% by August 2022. And that is just an example. You need these have all the components of the SMART acronym, where they are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So as you can see, and I mentioned, it's only one platform, one KPI per objective. And usually your campaign could run for a month, 2 months, or 3. It depends on what you want to achieve, but you definitely need to establish a time frame. Smart objective for engagement would be to obtain 500 posts with a particular hashtag on Facebook by August 2022. So if you're running that hashtag campaign where you want people to upload content using a campaign, then that is an engagement campaign, and that is an example of a smart objective. And the last one is an example of the conversions, and it would be to obtain 500 new email subscribers from Facebook, from your Facebook campaign by August 2027. So that gives you, this give you direction. This give you a way to come up with a content plan. Your message is not the same when you want to generate your email subscriptions than when you want to get people to share content using a hashtag. So this should be defined and agreed with your clients before you begin your campaign, because then at the end of the campaign, as I said, you're going to see if your campaign was successful, which I hopefully think they are. And finally, and also on the chapter and your reading materials this week, is the audience profile, or as we call it, the buyer persona. I strongly suggest that you check the HubSpot's information and the tools that the company offers, so you can create a customer profile. A buyer persona is a fictional representation of what your ideal customer is. For example, if you are managing a nonprofit organization, maybe one of your buyer personas is a potential profile for a donor, and the donor would have a different profile than saying a volunteer. So you need, and you can do as many buyer personas profiles as you want, but the more you know, the better. I just gave you a simple example that the difference between the profile of a donor is a lot when it comes to comparing it with a potential person that may want to do some volunteer work. And when you talk about buyer personas, you need to dig deeper when it comes to the demographic and the psychographics of the person. And a lot of people ask me now, how do I know, or how can I come up with a buyer persona? Well, going back to that nonprofit example, reach out to a donor and interview those and know more information about what are their points of resistance, or what attracts a nonprofit for them to donate money, and how do they want to be contacted. Do they use LinkedIn? Do they, or would they rather have you contact them using an email campaign? So that depends on gathering as much and as specific information as you can. What are the points of resistance for them making donations? So you can get a lot of information from your current customers. In this case, it may be a donor, and you can do the same with the volunteers. If you have volunteers on the field, ask them about their motivations, about what makes them be there, and then you come up with a profile that is usually comprised of these characteristics, but you can do any of them, and you can put a name to the person, and you can even come up with an image of what you think the person are, because when you know the person as much as possible, then you know how to approach them. So say, use this example a lot, you go on a first date, you might want to know a little bit about the person before, starting to talk on that date. So it's kind of I compare a lot social media and engagement with knowing who you are talking to, and it could be knowing your date. So maybe your potential audience members are potential dates, and you can see it that way. So that's it for this short lecture of this module 3, and we'll see you next week.